Hello and welcome. My name is Kent Trammell, and this is the CG Cookie live stream. I am very honored that you're here. I see several people in the chat already. I'm just going to wait a second to make sure I see the stream load. Okay, great. Looks like we're all good to go. I hope you're having a great Monday. Today's October 30th, and tomorrow's Halloween in the States, which is pretty exciting. And that means today we're going to be finishing the Goblin sculpt in celebration of October. And that's going to be a lot of detail sculpting. We're going to be polishing off the forms that are already there, and just in general trying to tie up any loose ends that might still be there. And again, this project is going to wrap up with being purely a sculpture. I'm going to try and 3D print it. Maybe is like the ultimate goal for this, but I'm not going to turn it into a retopologized mesh or meant for animation of any kind. At least not yet. You never know what happens in the future. But so picking up where we left off last time, I have sculpted a decent amount of detail in the pants. That's just a lot of repetitive work, and there's still a little bit left to do, so I can show you a bit of that process. But that was one thing I started at the end of the last episode in this series, and just have done a little bit of work on that since. But right now we're going to begin what I call level 3, which is the final stage. I'm going to readdress the head and add any kind of details, fine frequency wrinkles or pot marks. If we look at our artwork, you know, Tim has given us a ton of detail here. We're not going to be able to match everything. He's got this very tactile, I don't know, very fuzzy kind of appearance to this creature's skin quality. We're not going to be able to do that entirely, but of course we can add what looks like a scar here. We can add that kind of thing. Maybe these little bumps here are kind of like freckles or little moles. You know, whatever we can do to capture the essence of this character. And then also we have these rope objects that are geometry based on modifiers, so we need to convert that to purely like sculpted, or not sculpted, but purely watertight geometry for the sake of printing, and I'll show you how to do that. And then we also have to figure out what's going on in this pouch. I need to add some detail to that as well, but also being in 3D, we need to figure out what to put in here. So I'm going to throw out for the chat, like, I don't know if there should be like gold in here or rocks. Like, I don't know what he would be carrying in here. So maybe you can have some fun and throw out some suggestions, like what could be in this pouch that would, I don't know, add something to the character, make sense from all angles. So I don't know, see what you can come up with. And let's see, I appreciate Henry saying that it's looking pretty good. And John, you also said that. I appreciate that encouragement. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it as well. I'm excited to see what this turns out in terms of a print. And I'd be excited to give it to Tim as a going away present. That'd be kind of fun. All right, cool. Let's start, I think, with the ropes here, because I don't think any other detail, except for this guy maybe, but none other detail or forms that we're going to create or polish should really affect what these ropes are doing. And so here's a point: if you're doing your own workflow, you need to commit basically to these ropes. It's not that big of a commitment. For example, I can save the file and then just iterate up. And so I've got those work in progress ropes if I need to go back. But from here, we need to convert it to a watertight mesh. And the way that I like to do that, one second, John saying, wouldn't particles take care of the hair? Yeah, absolutely they would. That maybe is just a little bit more, that kind of leaves the realm of being a pure sculpture and goes more into like the final render quality. And I don't know, I usually don't commit to like particle hair unless I'm committing to like painting textures, laying out UVs, creating shaders. I'm not really planning on doing that for this project. And so that's why I'm, you know, like leaving out the hairs. But I mean, yeah, that is absolutely what I would do to take care of that effect. Maybe Arnie is a candy corn thief. That was my original idea as well. The problem is with that concept is we've got a ginormous piece of candy corn, which I also need to detail. And so if I have a huge piece of candy corn and then a bunch of small ones, I don't know, maybe that makes sense. That's probably, the scale issue could bother me because we don't really know how big the Goblin is if we have both sizes of candy corn. I personally like the Goblin being smaller, imagining that this is a real life-size candy corn and the Goblin is therefore really small. Can, like, you know, scurry across your desk like a Keebler elf or something. But that's honestly probably the best idea, is just to fill that with some candy corn. I wonder if I could pull off an effect to where, you know, we've got the big size candy corn, but he's like filled up his pouch with a few of them. I wonder if that could work. Then we'd be breaking the artwork a little bit, like making these stick out of the top. But I like that in terms of concept for the creature. Gives him a definitive purpose, or I guess mischievous reason. It supports the idea that he steals these things a lot, I guess. So, I don't know, that's an idea. Take some artistic license and maybe roll with that. I don't know, we'll leave that in there for now, see if there's if anyone comes up with a better suggestion. What if his bag has tools that help him to steal? That's a good idea. I like that idea a lot. It would probably prolong the creation process a little bit to create a bunch of tools, but that's a pretty good idea. I like it. Cool. 2 good ideas. Yeah, I'm gonna sculpt and then ponder that, let it simmer, and then maybe address it as one of the last things. But while I'm talking about the candy corn, let's go ahead and sculpt the detail into that, because it should be fairly easy. And I'm also going to jump over to our Chrome browser to find candy corn reference. Let's see. Be safe and go to Pixabay, because all these images are CC0. Let's see, candy corn. See if we can find a good image of what the surface quality of candy corn looks like. Okay. This one looks like it might be. I don't really remember. Let's download a huge image of that. Well, let's just view it. I don't remember candy corn having these distinct V shapes in each piece. Maybe that's just me. What I remember is these kind of ridges running along candy corn. I don't know. Am I just completely forgetting what candy corn really looks like? It's kind of interesting. What about pixels? It's another good resource for CC0 images. Striking out here. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm kind of striking out. Anyway. So this actually these kind of ridges that you see right here, very subtle. This is what I wanted to add in, but I don't really want that to have like a distinct triangle shape, but I mean, I guess it could. It's just not what I had imagined, but I mean, maybe that is how they all are. All right, let's roll with that. I'll switch back to the Blender window and, you know, how important those ridges are, or the triangle shape, I don't know. It's maybe not that big of a deal, but let's Alt-C to convert this object to a mesh, essentially serving to collapse the modifier stack. And we'll jump over to sculpt mode, grab my pen, and let's just, I think the clay strips brush is gonna be perfect for this kind of thing. Just lighten the strength. Oh, add enable dynamic topology. Detail size of 5 is fine because we're just going straight to the detail kind of phase. I'm just gonna run some strokes along the length of the candy corn, then go back and smooth it. That should significantly up-res our geometry. Actually, What I'm going to do here, I want to stay far away from the candy corn to get like a holistic understanding of the sculpture, but a detail size of 5 was not quite enough detail. And so I'm going to go down to 2 and just remind myself, since I like to use relative detail, to stay far away from the candy corn. And let's try that again. Go back to clay strips. I'm just creating some streaks. Let's just go into local view on this guy. And then when I smooth, we should get a much smoother result because of that level 2 detail size. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Even though this is less important, I'm being very subtle, so you might not even be able to see much of a change. But by doing the clay strips, I also, let me see. Let's change it to subdivide collapse because it's kind of maintaining the grid form in the topology, and I don't like that. I'd rather it be like random. All right, so this is the kind of ridginess I was anticipating when based on my, I guess, childhood memories of candy corn. But the reference that we just looked up has this triangular shape. So, I mean, whatever. If it's in the reference, let's roll with it. Maybe try and keep it subtle, not terribly distinct. Oh, first time you've seen candy corn. It must be a thing in the States, I guess. It's really popular around fall, very Halloween. It's basically just this big chunk of candy. Or I mean sugar. I don't love the flavor myself, but some people love it. All right, this just needs to be very subtle. I mean, it's a smooth candy, so there's not much more detail that I should add. I do want to kind of build up the edges to be a little more squared off, not terribly squared off. I'm going to change the detail size back to 5. I think we got the level of detail that I was after. But by using the clay strips, we'll kind of build up the edge. Round it off. It's not sharp. I don't want it to be sharp, but just a little more blocky. And there's definitely more of a ridge on the bottom side. So just building that up. Oh, we've got John has posted an image. Let me look at this. Yeah, that's much more what I was thinking. Let me share that out real quick. Or if you guys look at that image, I mean, I'll go ahead and share that. That is more what I was thinking. That's what I grew up with. I don't know where the triangle shapes were, but yeah, just a very smooth shape overall. A little bit of rigidness. So that, yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate you finding that. And I wasn't terribly crazy. I appreciate being able to sleep tonight thinking that. So yeah, I've already spent, I think, probably a little too much time on this shape. It does not need to be that big of a deal. But to get that rigidness, that ridgy kind of texture, I kind of treat it like rough sculpting, you know, or gestural sculpting, just running a bunch of clay strips along it and then smoothing it out, but not all the way. And that ends up leaving that sort of texture. So, yeah, that's kind of fun. I don't know, like using an incomplete workflow to get a complete effect, I guess, is kind of where I get that from. So, all right, so let's unhide that. Or I mean, unhide the rest of our goblin. And yeah, I think that candy corn will work out fine. If I were to texture and shade this, I would do more texture detail in the with procedural textures. But for a 3D print, I mean, this will work really well. Oh yeah, sorry, thank you. Missing the blender window. All right, let's go back to Blender. Okay, so I've unhid everything. Very simple way to update the candy corn. Let's see how the penetrations are working out. I might try and bring this area around the arm, make it a little bit skinnier. And the reason I'm doing this is, so if we look at the intersection, I want to avoid an intersection like this. Oh, whoops, where'd he go? Oh, I don't know where that went. Okay, so let me try that again. I want to avoid intersections like this, because that clearly reads like an intersection. Rather, I want the arm to come around and tuck back in, and then the intersection happens, and the candy corn goes out like this. So that's what I'm after. And that's why I'm bringing the candy corn in a little bit, shrinking it, the volume down, so that I can see more of that bicep as the surface juts back into the underarm. And that's going to make it less like an intersection and more like two surfaces like meeting and respecting their boundaries, I guess. Okay, so Omar has a full name idea, Arnie Goblin. I'm trying to remember where he got this Arnold Schwarzenegger connection. Oh, it must have been the arms when I was doing the musculature, because talking a lot about muscles, how could you not end up talking about Arnold? I like it. Yeah, let's say that's it. Yeah, Arnie Goblin. I'm cool with that. That works for me. All right, so we've got the candy corn worked out. And let's see, let's work on this rope down here. Let's convert it to a watertight mesh. I'm gonna do it with Alt-C. We're gonna convert this thing to a mesh, collapsing the modifier stack. And then I need to fill in the ends of the rope. So I'm just gonna select that edge loop and go back to my mouse and fill in that hole with F. Do that with all of them. And then I'm going to use the proportional edit, connected proportional editing, and just simply make those ends uneven. Because right now they're all ending at the exact same point and it just looks a little unnatural. But if I separate them a little, do the same, whoops. That's a pretty dense mesh on the pants. Let's switch back to the rope. Accidentally messed up my selection. And let's fill, and this time while I have it filled, I'll just move that face. Oh, there we go. Fill with F and then G to move it. There we go. All right, so now this is, it doesn't have any open geometry, but we do have some really bad, what do you call them? Intersections with the ropes. And so if we zoom in and see a cross section, we can see how those intersections are occurring, and that will not print. That's not good for 3D printing. And so what I need to do is we're going to add a remesh modifier. And this is essentially going to like shrink wrap, sorry, that's maybe not a great term, saran wrap a new geometry around the surface of the existing geometry. So that might not make complete sense. I'm going to jump up the Octree depth to, let's go 6. And that essentially serves as the resolution. It improves the resolution, giving us more detail. And let's change the mode to smooth. Okay, we're getting somewhere, but let's jump up to like 8 for the Octree depth. And this will slow down. But we're starting to get a much better, actually, no, we're not. It's not doing what I expected it to do. If we go into local view, that's really interesting. It's still doing the penetration, or the intersecting. Wonder why. Remove disconnected pieces. Let's change the octree to 9 to get more detail out of that. Does anybody see something that I'm missing? I did not expect... See, I expected this. Oh. Wow, that's not even working. Huh. Threshold. If removing disconnected pieces. Huh. Well, this kind of backfired because it's not doing what I expected. I don't know why it would remesh interior faces like this. Bummer. I'm gonna have to maybe research this a little bit more and offer a solution, because that's not gonna work for 3D printing. Bummer. Okay, well, apply scale may be required. That's not a bad idea. Control A, apply scale. Not a bad idea. When in doubt, I tend to apply scale as well. Wow, it's really surprising me. Okay, well, what if I turn this off and add a decimate modifier? Let's try decimating it a little bit. Wow. Okay. Let's see if we can figure this out. Sorry, this is not what I intended to do, but I'm going to try one more thing. Yeah, it does look like I did not expect the remesh modifier to handle the 3 strands individually. That's kind of what I thought the remesh modifier was all about in the first place, just like taking a mesh and like saran wrapping it around the object, which would avoid interior faces, but apparently it's not working that way. So we can try one more thing, or I have one more idea. I'm gonna select the 3 strands individually, or let's just hit, in edit mode, just hit P and select, or separate by loose parts. And then from here, let's try a Boolean and a union. And let's switch to the carve solver. I find that one tends to work a little bit better, because obviously this is not the union that I was expecting. Okay, that is. Let's apply it. Sorry, this is a little slow in terms of calculations. Get rid of this guy. And now, let's see. Let's try that one more time. Union. I'm sorry, Boolean. Pick that last strand. Back to carve. Wait for a moment, and then union as the operation. So yeah, carve is much more robust than B-mesh, but I think you pay for that. Oh, cannot execute. Better eat those words. Wait a minute. Is it still? Oh no. Probably gonna cause a crash. I tried to move it with the Boolean modifier still enabled. Nuts. All right, give it a couple more seconds. Sorry guys, this is boring. Okay, remove the Boolean. Is it still intersecting? What in the world? Look, it's still intersecting. That doesn't make any sense to me. Wow, I'm stumped. A remesh and a union Boolean still maintains the interior faces. That's weird. I mean, I think it's a watertight mesh. Yeah, it is. We've filled in those holes. Funky. Okay, well, in that case, we're gonna have to skip this part. All right, let me reload. No, I'm not gonna reload. I think I didn't save. What am I gonna do? I would suggest the bool tool add-on, in my experience, much faster than the modifier. Yeah, absolutely, it's much faster, but it's still using the same modifier. So I'm afraid I'll get the same result. But anyway, I'm not gonna waste any more time on this. Let's just continue with the detail. That's pretty lame. Let me get back to before I moved this. All right, we'll just leave that geometry as is. That's a weird problem. Did not anticipate that. We got a formula union ABC. Yeah, no, I think you're right mathematically what was going on, but I mean, technically that's what I did, I think. No, I'm definitely not going to retopologize it. That would be really, really bad. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I mean, that's, you know, problems like this come up and I just need to have more time to play with it. But there's other bigger fish to fry, I think, currently. Anyway, that is going to bother me for a while. All right, let's revisit the head. We haven't touched that for a while, a couple episodes, I think. But there's a lot of nice detail that we can refine through sculpting, like adding the scar and, you know, general like facial texture. So let's move on to that and go back to sculpt mode. I think applying the modifier caused the problem. Well, no, because like when I applied the modifier, even on those two strands, it was still intersecting. And so on the simpler operation, it still maintained the interior edges and faces. That's the real problem. And I'm not sure why that happened. So I don't know. Just gonna try and forget about it and get some better sculpting into better details sculpted and revisit that later. But as I revisit it later, I'll definitely share with you like what I figure out. Okay, so with this detail sculpting, I'm gonna use the detail size of 5 as my maximum. Did you try remeshing each strand before Boolean? It sometimes helps fix. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. That's certainly what I should try. Since those things kind of take a little bit of processor power and you're just sitting here. I mean, okay, do you guys want me to try and figure that out, or would you rather see me continue on with the detail sculpting? Because I'd be happy to do whatever is more pertinent. But I figured messing around with Boolean settings would be the more boring choice. Anyway, just revisiting this ear, and with the detail size of 5, you can see as I touch the surface just with the brush and then smooth it out, we have a lot more geometry now. Which makes it look a lot more high resolution, which also will start to threaten our viewport performance. So I need to be mindful of that. Let's see. Okay. Cool. I'll just continue on with the details then, but certainly we'll update you as I figure out. I'm going to try what Cody said, remeshing each strand individually, union, Boolean, and then, well, that might be enough. And that might be it, rather than remeshing after the Booleans. But I will let you know what I come up with. Sorry about that. It really sucks when it doesn't do what you expect, but that's computer graphics in a nutshell. It's so much problem solving. So the more you stick with computer graphics, the better problem solver you will be. And I think that kind of applies to like life in general. You kind of figure out how to approach problems from different angles, and that's a pretty cool bonus skill set. All right, so with my snake hook brush, I want to pull in the eardrum because right now we don't really have a proper hole for this. So I'm going to pull it backward into the head. And then with the inflate brush, just kind of push that in further. And now I'm starting to intersect. Oh, this is where the stylization, the exaggerated features start to become a problem. Let's see. I'm going to do front faces only because you can see the surfaces of the ear and the mouth were starting to intersect, and the brush was affecting both. Oh, it's still affecting both. Oh, wait. Okay, let's try that again. Turning. Okay, that works. So enabling front faces only, I just want it to modify the surface that I'm, I don't know, facing from the front. In this case, the mouth is facing from the back side, and that's, I don't want them to interact that way. All right, so I'm just, whoops. Listen to the creepy music. I admit that I had a radar for more creepy music specifically for this stream, so I'm glad you noticed that. I'm trying to have a little touch of creepiness going on. Man, now the front faces is kind of giving me an error. All right, so I'm not going to be able to push this ear in much further. That kind of stinks. This is a case where the 2D art can really cheat and get away with it, but in 3D, I can't really push the eardrum hole further in without intersecting with the mouth, and so I'm kind of stuck. So I'm just going to have to compromise. Just trying to rough out more of this anatomy. Completely based on the artwork. That's all I'm concerned about right now. I could look up some human anatomy, I suppose. Man, I don't like intersecting there. Wonder if I can just bring this forward. Maybe I don't need to push the mouth so far back. I mean, who's really going to be looking back there anyway? Oh, no. I didn't enable symmetry. Man, I'm striking out today. Nuts. That's so lame. I don't want to sculpt these details twice. I haven't done too much, I guess. Let's go back to my previous save file. I might have lost the candy corn. Yeah. Wow. So that's another aspect of the life of a 3D artist, is just kind of screwing up and having to revert. It happens. But I'm going to readdress the ear since I haven't done much and enable symmetry this time, so I can get both sides for free. Sorry guys, I swear I do this full time. I shouldn't be making mistakes like this, but we're human. I'm human, very, very human. All right, so detail size of 5, let's start over. Funniest stream. Well, that's good. I'm glad you, see, I can't do symmetrize. I mean, I could hack together a symmetrize, but remember, symmetrize would do my entire body, regardless of masking or visibility or anything. So I could lop off the head, symmetrize, reconnect it. I could have done that. And if I had really sculpted a lot on the head, that is what I would have done. But since I didn't sculpt much on the head, I've been spending too much time kind of talking through my problems rather than actually doing work. I just might as well revert, because as much as I absolutely despise doing things more than once, it's always better the second time around, no matter what. It's just a law, it seems. All right, let me do what I was doing earlier. Now that I know how to approach this, I will collapse the back of the throat. You can see I created a little wart. So let's increase the detail size to 10. I like to do that whenever I see bad geometry occurring. See, yeah, look at that. I lopped that piece off entirely. Okay. Back to sculpt mode, and we will continue bringing forward the back of the throat. This is also just better done with a higher detail level. Now we've got a little more room if I want to bring the ear in. See? Better the second time. All right. Nice. That looks better. Detail size of 5. That's my standard for doing the third level of detail. And let's continue with the inflate brush. Just building up some of these structures. Adding layers of these like concentric loops. They're not concentric, but these kind of round shapes. I'm going to build those up as I continue down into the ear. That's just kind of typical generic ear anatomy. But it is unique. Whoops. Kind of applying this to a goblin. I'm just, you know, out of the many times I've sculpted a human ear, applying this to a goblin that has extreme proportions is kind of an interesting challenge. No, I appreciate that. Nuha, I think, Nuha Mahdi. To see my mistakes, if that helps you, then trust me, there's plenty more where that comes from. And if you stick with the streams, you'll probably see a lot. But I think an instructor would... I think there's a pride issue being an instructor. You want to look like you know exactly what you're talking about all the time. And that's just not realistic. So still, it doesn't mean we don't want to try to look that way. But, I mean, mistakes are absolutely part of it. So I'm glad you think that that's still beneficial. Alright, so increasing the geometry up here will just give us a smoother result. By the way, as a side conversation, I got a Switch, a Nintendo Switch, and Mario recently. Just started playing it last night. Has anyone else been playing the game, and do they have thoughts? What do they think about it? I've enjoyed the probably hour or two I've put into it so far, but I'm not a big gamer, and this is the first game system I bought for myself in, gosh, I don't know, 5-6 years or something like that. So I'm excited, but I'm curious if anyone else is in the same boat as me. I should probably turn off subdivide collapse and move over to subdivide edges because I am regenerating geometry, like right there. I lost some of the smoothness that I had already done. And that's, I don't need to be doing that right now. There we go. So a lot of this you might notice is just a lot of polishing. But now that I'm here, I've hinted at some of these creases earlier, and now I'm going to come in and really refine them. So if I get close with a detail size of 5, we're getting a lot more detail quickly. And then pinching that up will help, and smoothing around it. Yeah, it's looking much nicer. But you know, any subtle surface directional shifts I want to emphasize. Like right here, you can see just a very subtle ridge. Well, let's really hammer that effect home with the crease brush, just cutting that in a little bit. And then accentuating with the inflate on either side. Very subtle, all this is very subtle. But that's gonna help polish off that shape and refine the anatomy. But with dynamic topology, you want to be sure that your geometry is consistent. You know, I don't want to have these polygons be much bigger than this over here. That's going to show up in the print, and I don't want that to be the case. So part of the polishing is just making sure to keep your geometry consistent. Like, I'm not really changing the form here. I'm just increasing the geometry count. All right, let's take a look at our artwork. I haven't really studied that in a while, so I want to get some inspiration from it. Like, he has some really hard edges in here, really hard creases. I want to be sure to emphasize that. Right now, it's on my sculpture, it's not as hard or refined. And so with my crease brush, just gonna push those in nice and hard on both sides. Smooth out. You can probably tell that my performance is taking a little bit of a hit, which is maybe a warning sign to me that this is going to be a slow... It's going to slow down even more, especially considering how much more I have to address. And so what I'm anticipating is having to add a decimate modifier to give me more usable geometry. I'm gonna take my sweatshirt off, getting a little toasty. All right. See if I'm missing any questions. Okay, cool. So Mikhail, you're waiting for the new Tomb Raider. Hope it comes out next year. Awesome. I've not really played any of the Tomb Raiders. I don't know if that was maybe a little... I don't know why I've never played those, besides not being a huge gamer, but I've always been very aware of them. I should try it. Was Mario sculpted? I don't know. He doesn't really have the kind of detail that suggests he was sculpted, but a ton of the detail in the game clearly was sculpted. It's a beautiful game. I'm impressed, given its technical limitations. The Switch's technical limitations. I'm impressed at how good they made it look. A lot of PBR stuff, or what looks like PBR, at least, you know, reflection probes and things like that going on. Probes. I don't know if it's reflection probes exactly, but a lot of beautiful, shiny things going on in the game, and a lot of times that means PBR. All right, so in here, I'm totally making this stuff up, but it's pretty easy to get by, you know, following that kind of spiral into the ear canal. Like, that's all I'm doing here, and, you know, especially with a fantasy creature, you can achieve that effect, make it up as you go pretty easily, and that's all I'm doing. Obviously, I don't have any reference, but... anyway, just slowly refining these shapes. Just giving it some depth, that's really going to help it. See how far I can go down until I start to intersect. Okay. I also need to think, when it comes to that intersection, I need to leave enough room between both surfaces for the sake of 3D printing. If that gap is too thin, then we're going to, it won't print properly. Like, that wall will not have enough structure. Yeah, I appreciate that, Mikhail. He's looking pretty good. He's been a really fun character. I have to thank Tim again for letting me sculpt him. This crease sort of got away from me at some point. Like, it's not contributing as much as I think it should. It's just, it looks sort of like a crease just drawn on the surface rather than like affecting the silhouette or the... Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I don't like it though. Let's look at the reference, see what's going on there. Okay, there's a little bit of a ridge right in here that I can add, as well as refining these two wrinkles. So with the crease brush, just pulling it down this way. Okay, let's go back to these guys. They're a long way from finished. Maybe just need to lightly touch this whole surface, smooth it out to give myself more geometry. Because if the geometry is too low resolution, it can be, even though I'm generating new geometry as I sculpt, sometimes the low res, it can be so low res that you don't really know what you're generating yourself. So I find that keeping it consistent just makes the sculpting workflow a little easier. Okay, that's much more defined. It's not matching 100%, but it's looking pretty good overall. Okay, those structures are refined a bit better. Now for the scar. So chances are the scar is not going to be exactly the same place on the other side. In fact, it's probably just on this side. This is an asymmetrical feature, I would guess. So I'm going to hold off on the scar and do that as one of the last touches on the head. That way I can sculpt everything else that will be symmetrical on both sides, and then any asymmetry I can add at the end. All right, so I'm going to go back into the eye area and add... There's still a lot of wrinkles in here that I haven't recreated, so let's add those guys. And kind of my thought process in this is using the structure that's already there and just adding additional wrinkles sort of in between. Like for example here, let's just add another one. And my typical wrinkle workflow is creases first, not necessarily always first, but creases and then inflate. Yeah, honestly, creases, when you do that first and then inflate over top, you'll get that nice, that much nicer intersection rather than just the crease by itself. Let's also make sure that this looks like an eyeball is sitting inside, so I'm just pushing in with the crease brush there as well. All right, that's much higher frequency. That's looking pretty good. What might be the cost of printing a sculpt like this? It completely depends on, I guess, the size of the final sculpture. I was going to reach out to Jonathan Williamson and ask if I could use his Form 1. And I've printed a character once before from that Form 1. And let's see, it's sitting somewhere in my office, but it's about 5 inches tall. And he said it costs about $16 in resin worth to print that. So that's, I mean, that's the cost that I'm familiar with. I've never actually printed a sculpture through Shapeways or anything like that. But if anyone else has, please, I'm curious about that myself. If I was, how much this would cost me to just print it out through an online company, which I have never done. But I was a little surprised that it took $16 of resin and like it wasn't a solid sculpture. You know, like it was thin throughout. So I don't know. That struck me as like, wow. I mean, pretty significant because that stuff goes away pretty quick. So you got to replenish your resin, buy new stuff. So if you're really into 3D printing, you're probably spending a decent amount of money keeping your supplies up. All right, I like the additional wrinkles. I think it matches what we see from Tim. He just drew so many wrinkles in this guy, and it looks really, really good. Let's just continue refining. And it's almost been an hour already. Yeah, those hiccups in the tools really took me back. I don't know, maybe remesh has changed since I, really used it. It's not something I use every day, but maybe it's changed in recent Blender versions. It doesn't act the way I remember it. It's looking pretty good. The workflow is certainly a little slower, just with geometry increasing in poly count. The tools are just a little bit slower. That's becoming more and more noticeable to me. I'm sure it is to you in the chat as well. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to use a decimate modifier pretty soon to decrease that value, which is fine. I mean, decimate does maintain the detail quite well. It's just not perfect. So if I think my geometry, like my details are exactly what I wanted, it can just be a bummer that it's not going to be exactly that after decimating. But I mean, the differences are completely negligible. All right, so smoothing out some of these shapes since the poly count is low. Let's bring this crease down further. Then I'm going to split it off into two separate creases. Let's see. Cody's saying, depends on the size. Scaling up a sculpt raises the price exponentially, not linearly. I've had figures around 4 inches tall cost 30 to 40 on Shapeways. Okay, that's yeah. So I guess lesson there is to keep them small. I appreciate that info, Cody. That helps. I would definitely pay 30 or 40 for one of my models for a 4-inch tall version of the model. That is pretty small, but that's not terrible, I guess. It could be worse, in my opinion. So yeah, I guess that means for this guy to be painted on Shapeways, I wouldn't print it taller than 4 inches. And once I cut those creases in, I kind of feather them out. I call it feathers, kind of how I think of it, but I like to add just a subtle little raise with the inflate brush on the outside of the crease. Pretty standard thing that I like to do. All right. I'm going to fork this as well and just create 2 lines out of this. With such an intense wrinkle here, I think it just helps to suggest that there's a lot of skin that's being covered by, that's being hidden underneath this crease. So the forked wrinkle kind of gives that illusion. Oh man, I did this last time too. Accidentally resized the window. If anyone here is not aware, I've created a thread in the community forums on cgcookie.com about matching a lighting example. It's just sort of like a fun lighting exercise, and I'd encourage you to go check that out, maybe participate in it. It's been kind of fun. I've seen some really cool entries so far, but it's just a fun thing to do together, where you just take one of your favorite renders of lighting that has good lighting that you appreciate and just try and recreate it. So that's been kind of a fun thing the community's been doing with together lately. So check it out if you haven't. All right, there's a pretty nice wrinkle that I have been missing so far coming out of the cheek and then along the top edge of the teeth. So let's add that in. I think that'll look nice. As you can no doubt tell, a lot of this workflow is just crease and inflate, and smooth, I guess. I forget to count smooth as a brush because it's just holding shift, and it's very, very frequently called upon. Let's see, what about the teeth? Is there anything I can do to make that look a little more detailed? Maybe not. I'll just leave them as it is. Kind of thinking in my head to prioritize other details over that, because the artwork doesn't support that there's any other detail in the teeth. But there is a lot of detail elsewhere, so just don't waste the time on those teeth yet, if at all. Matt Dickin is saying, it is hard to say. I use shapeways depending on who you are, the size of model, and the material. You just have to check around for pricing. So there's probably a really big spectrum. Mark Smith is asking if I've used the optimize on the sculpt yet, and I don't believe that's an option oh my gosh. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it might not use, okay, 2.79. I swear to you that I looked for the optimize recently and it was not there, and I thought that they just built it in automatically. Gosh, it's like I've never used Blender before. I'm completely untrustworthy. You just can't trust what I'm teaching you, I guess. That's the moral of today's lesson. I swear that thing wasn't there. I swear to you. Well, I don't know. My memory could be going as well. My wife would certainly say that's possible. All right, there's got to be something I can do down here. There's not a lot of detail. Maybe just continue. I don't know. This is just a little too. There's just nothing happening, and I'm not. It feels inconsistent to just leave this whole area down here like completely smooth. Maybe just give him a little bit of a ridge around the lip. Just kind of some meat underneath the mouth, or the jaw rather. Yeah, just giving some variety to the surface. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay, simple enough. Oh yeah, I'm starting to reach the point where my mesh is not symmetrical anymore, so I need to be aware of that. This is kind of hard to explain what I'm doing, but like with overly smooth surfaces, I just don't want them to look like plastic. They need to look organic, and so to add variety to that surface is what's going to make it look organic. So they're very subtle changes, but I'm kind of going in between, back and forth through the inflate and crease, and just kind of adding somewhat random like forms, just very subtly. And now when we rotate around, all of a sudden we've got a much more rich surface, much more organic surface. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm going to do it with the forehead now. It's just very subtle, and those subtle things are kind of hard to maybe discern. Do you ever use the blob brush instead of inflate? You know, I never really have. Let's just test. Wait a minute. For some reason, okay. Let's go to the blob brush. Let's see the difference, because in my memory, and this goes way back to when I first started sculpting, blob and inflate seem to do the same thing. And so I just went with inflate, since that's what they called it in ZBrush. So I don't know, to me, I don't see like any discernible difference between those two, and that's why I just go with the inflate. Kind of the same difference between, what was it? There was flatten and there's another one like, oh, polish. They got rid of polish. I kind of think they can get rid of blob personally, but I don't know. I often use the blob brush for making holes like nostrils and ears. Yeah, I don't think inflate is better than blob or vice versa, but I don't really see what the difference between them is. Something about this is still bothering me. But I mean, I think it matches the artwork pretty well, yeah. Okay. So continuing on with these kind of random like creases and inflate points, like with the forehead, yeah, I find it hard to describe exactly what these shapes are, but I mean, you should be able to see them in the artwork fairly well hinted at with these kind of darkened areas. Just very, very subtle organic shapes. If you need me to explain that further, I will certainly try, but I mean, there's, I don't know, I find that there's not too much to explain. It's just subtle little changes, but they make a huge difference in terms of feeling organic versus feeling inorganic. And sometimes it's little subtle things like this that can make the difference between like a good like a pro sculpture and an amateur sculpture. But hopefully you can see that. I guess it's subtle musculature under the surface, or maybe the shape of the skull. But like here, it still looks smooth overall. But then once you start orbiting around, it's just got a much deeper, much more interesting surface. Sorry, I'll just stop talking about it. I'm trying to explain it. I feel like maybe some of you are like, yeah, that's what I'm missing in my sculpture, like those kind of details, but explain to me what they are exactly, and I'm not really doing a great job, I feel like. See, did I miss any comments? Okay, Mikos says, I once saw a live stream by, I think, the ZBrush guys where they had a mini competition and they let users share their screens and what they're working on. Maybe CG Cookie can do something like that. That's a pretty cool idea. I wonder how they had that set up. Because theoretically, if we had like 100 people show up, how could we get 100 people to like share screens kind of thing? I don't know. I like that idea a lot. I'm curious how to actually execute it technically. But great idea. I'm all for these things that kind of get us working together as a community more. It's fun. Again, I've probably said this a bunch of times, but like seeing this, the same faces in the chat, I think is just a really cool new thing for me. I used to only interact through like intercom tickets and questions on the site, but now that I get to see you guys repeatedly, like week after week, I don't know, I feel like I kind of know you. And hopefully you know me better too. That is cool. I think that's an evolutionary step for CG Cookie to become much more personal and figure out how to do that at scale to some degree. Okay, that shape I just added is a little too defined. But that can be part of it, like to create these subtle surface undulations, like create it too loud, too broad, and then, or too strong and bring it back. So right now the brow is just really, really smooth and not organic. And so I need to figure out how to get that surface to look more undulated, some very subtle wrinkle shifts, some areas bulging more than others, a little bumpy. One of the cool things about one of my favorite tools is to make the crease brush really big and subtle in terms of strength, and just lightly create some strokes that break up the surface. And then tighten it back up, increase the strength once we get to really defined wrinkles. Cut it deeper and smooth it out. Yes, that's a good, yeah, that's maybe a more to the point way to describe some of the more subtle surface shapes once we get to this polishing stage. And the inflate brush here really helps to tighten up the crease. And that only works if we've got subdivide edges enabled. If you do subdivide collapse, it won't work. So I'm gonna cut a pretty intense wrinkle, or a crease rather, and then start smoothing it out. And that's still a little too strong, but it got us in the right direction. There we go. Now that feels much more organic. Nice. Save this file, making pretty decent progress. But in a lot of ways, this is the fun part of the sculpture, one of the more fun parts, because this is assuming that you've got a really good base already sculpted, a good foundation, your forms are already established, and it's just like icing on the cake. And that can be really fun. From Zach Zellman, do you have any advice on where to start with sculpting, like certain kinds of objects? What did you practice with when you first started sculpting? The first thing I ever sculpted was a human face, and it was really difficult. So I wouldn't recommend that. It was just kind of like diving in the deep end without going into the shallow end first. If you're up for that challenge, go for it. Just expect to have to redo it a bunch of times, which is what I had to do. Man, the grab brush is really slow at this resolution. Let's try the optimize tool, which I thought was not there anymore. Yeah, it's still pretty slow. So objects to begin sculpting. I did a tutorial a while back about a tree. I think that's a pretty decent one because it incorporates it incorporated the skin modifier and how to create a generic shape that then you could add the bark to and the kind of gnarliness that goes into a tree. It was actually also for Halloween because it was like a spooky tree, but I think that's a good organic sculpture to kind of get your feet wet. John mentioned Melvin. That is the subject of the Sculpting Fundamentals course. I think that obviously is a good place to start as well. So Zach, have you sculpted at all, or like sculpted with clay traditionally, or is this your like first time getting into Blender or ZBrush or any kind of digital sculpting? Like, are you a complete brand new beginner? Just sharpening up the edge around the eyelid, because if you look at your eyelids, they actually have a fairly sharp edge close to the eyeball. I mean, it's not razor sharp, but it's sharper than you might expect for skin. So I'm just going to carry that all the way around. Time for a decimate. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to save the file. We'll add a decimate modifier. Let's see what the polygon count is up to. Go to object mode as well. So 500,000 polygons right now. Yeah, I mean, I can go higher, but it'll just continue to gradually get slower. So we might as well do a collapse. Let's go to a ratio of, see what 0.3 looks like. And this can take a while, depending. Higher polygon counts obviously going to take longer to calculate. Oh, John says, is rigging the bane of your existence? Sorry, I missed that from earlier. Is it the... No, I've come to have a respectable relationship with rigging. It was very hard to learn. And I mean, obviously a steep learning curve, as a lot of people have issue with rigging. Okay, so we're down to 161. And I think that the details are still holding up pretty well. Maybe we don't, let's do 0.5 actually. So back to rigging. I understand that it's kind of a necessary evil, but it's in the similar way that scripting can really enlighten you as to how powerful Blender or 3D or computers can be in general. Rigging is similar to that. Like, if you ever watch a rigging demo reel, oh man, they're just so inspirational to me to see how they study deformation and how they make it interactive, and there's a good UI, and it's like the usability exercises involved and challenges involved in there. So no, it's not that I don't do it a lot if I can avoid it, but I do get a kick, especially out of when modeling and rigging kind of marry each other. And when I worked at Real Effects, I did a lot of blend shape work where the rig, you can kind of have a rig that's based on pure bones, like put a bunch of bones in the face and they all move certain influences of parts of the face. Or you can add blend shapes, which is like sculpting exactly the expression you're going after, and you don't have to worry about the influences being exactly what you need. And so in that way, I really enjoyed making those kind of rigs, blend shape rigs. It's just really cool to see rigging and modeling work together, but also get exactly what you want at the end of the rig. No question about it. That's a fun exercise for me. I did that a lot professionally when I was with Real Effects. Let's see. I don't see. I asked Zach to explain like how new to sculpting is, but I don't see that him. Oh, okay, no, he did. I'm definitely a noob. I tried modeling a sci-fi helmet course, and it was just like you said, jumping in the deep end. But other than that, I'm pretty new to Blender. I've done a lot of modeling courses and tutorials, but I'm brand new to sculpting. So yeah, that was definitely diving in the deep end. Hard surface sculpting, even more than organic, is like a whole nother ball game, a difficult ball game. So yeah, I hope you weren't too discouraged by that. Start with fundamentals of sculpting. I think the Melvin character is still pretty cool of a result to end up with. I recommend starting there. You should have a little bit more success. Done a lot of modeling courses, brand new to sculpting. I hope that you at least realize how powerful sculpting was, and maybe are still excited about what it can do for you, because yeah, it's a revolutionary tool for modeling. So pretty crucial to modern modelers' workflows. All right, I'm gonna go back to, oh no, I never applied the decimate. Sorry, lost track of what I was doing. Question from Berserker Wolf. Any advice for setting up basic low poly model human ones? Let's see. I'm new to Blender, went from Maya and Autodesk World due to school, but love how Blender has the sculpt mode. Any advice for setting up basic low poly models? Yeah, I would use the skin modifier. If you go to, where is it? Let me find it real quick. Switch over to my browser. Yeah. So if you look at my realistic character course, I go over the skin modifier process, I think. Surely I do. Oh, no, I don't. Okay, sorry, scratch that. Go over to Jonathan Williamson's Intro to Character Modeling course. This guy right here. He's going to show you how to build out a basic low poly mesh to start with, and then he goes all through sculpting, and he uses a skin modifier base. So I would recommend starting here. The skin modifier is amazing. If you ever use ZBrush, it's a lot like Z-spheres, and it generates a basic mesh by using simplified input, just connected vertices. So highly recommend you doing that. All right. Okay. Oh, I use the skin modifier with Melvin. Sorry. It gets confusing to remember what I've taught in which courses. But thank you for having my back on that. So Zach's going to reattempt the course for sure. I've got much more comfortable with sculpting. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, stay motivated. I mean, if you like this stuff, it only gets more satisfying the more you get into it. Anything else I'm missing? Is there a CG course on blend shape rigs? No. And it's been on my to-do list for years. I built a whole character, like a kind of this monster sculpt specifically for that. Where did I even put? I don't know where those renders are. But I created a character model for that course, and it just never ended up happening. It's a very complex thing, and I think I decided that it was. Sometimes it's too complex for too small of a demographic that other things take priority. Other courses take priority. So I still aspire to create that one day, but we don't have it yet. The Piero course does have some blend shape stuff taught, but it's not as in depth as what I want to teach. But check out Piero, the rigging section. It's a doozy, but I do teach some of that workflow there. All right. We're at about half the polygons. I think I'm good with that. Let's apply it, and we'll go from there. Yeah, that should speed up the workflow a little bit. Speed up the sculpting tools. Need to refine this wrinkle a bit better. I'm doing this thing where I want the wrinkle to be more intense on one end and gradually soften its intensity towards the middle. Oops. And we've got about 10 minutes left. I didn't get completely finished. I need to apply all of this kind of sculpting polish to the rest of the body and the arms and things like that. I didn't even touch the pouch. So yeah, I kind of botched this one. I got caught up on some of my mistakes, so I apologize for that. But I mean, I'm not going to do anything that I haven't explained or talked about yet. So I don't know. I had maybe too high expectations for what I could accomplish, but anyway, I'll certainly post some finished renders. Either on social media or as a project to my CG Cookie gallery, and yeah, so you'll see what happens with the Goblin eventually. But I'm not going to finish it 100% today, so I apologize for that. I appreciate that, John. Hope it was still informative and you enjoyed watching. But so speaking of this series ending, and others are going to be starting next month, one thing that I'm excited about is I posted it today. We're going to try a genre of live stream about like Blender films, and we're going to take a look at those in terms of, you know, their artistic quality, their the narrative involved, as well as the technical aspects like quality of animation, things to glean, like how they did certain things. And we're really excited about that because there's a ton of Blender short films out there, and I mean, to my knowledge, I don't know of too many people doing like in-depth. Critique is too strong. We're not just gonna, you know, like consider it as like film critic, you know, jerks. We're not gonna do that. We definitely want it to be informational and talk about the technical aspects. If you've ever seen the VFX show, it's a podcast. It's a really good one. I recommend it. But if you've ever seen that, we kind of want to do that for the Blender side of things. And so anyway, we're going to do the first one of those this coming Tuesday. Me and Lampel are going to do that. And it's going to be on the Daily Dweebs, which is the newest short film from the Blender Foundation. So hope you guys tune back in for that. It should be a lot of fun. We love movies here, and you know, why in the world should we not, you know, apply that to Blender films? So we're excited for it. And then in terms of project-based streams after this Goblin, I still kind of am leaning toward doing like a traditional polygon modeling of like a heavy machinery, like an excavator or dump truck, something. My kid's really into that stuff, so I see them all the time, and I feel like that could be a fun exercise, fun series to follow. Just a bunch of really in-depth polygon modeling. But if you have any votes, like if you would like to see anything, any suggestions for the next project-based stream that I do, please post that in the chat and I will happily consider it. Again, I primarily want to do something that you guys will benefit from, what you guys want to see. I don't think there's much detail at the end of this guy's nose. Yeah, it just looks pretty straight. I'm seeing something from Sabi404. I tried out the Boolean. I think it works on the ropes like this. In brief, separate the 3 threads, apply Boolean on 2 of them, remove the leftover mesh, then Boolean the 3rd. With the union of 2, apply modifier, remove the original mesh, and done. Okay, I'm gonna have to read through that a couple more times, but I'm glad to hear that you seem to have gotten a successful result, so I'm gonna try that for sure. John's asking, when do we find out what the next stream sculpt? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm catching up. I kind of already talked about that. Watching you go through the process. Oh, you're reviewing Big Buck Bunny. We will, as long as the streams are received fairly well and you guys seem into it. Actually, what made me think about doing that genre is I went back and watched Elephant's Dream, and I don't know, was really impressed with some of the visuals and what they were able to do so far back then. The animation's pretty rough, so that's something that has really improved. But anyway, it's a weird narrative. I think there's some fun stuff to think about there in terms of just film criticism, but then also the technical stuff and retrospectively looking back and how far Blender's come and what it was able to do back then. So that to say, like, I would like to go back and look at all the Blender short films. I mean, there's such a collection over the years, not just the ones made by the Blender Foundation, but elsewhere, other studios and individuals and things like that. So yeah, Big Buck Bunny, absolutely one of those. Dump truck sounds cool. All right, great. My nephew is into construction equipment too. Maybe that's what I'll do then. It's been in the back of my mind for a while, so maybe that is what I'll do. Just a construction vehicle of some kind. yeah, all of them. Caminandes, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, if you guys are into it, we would love to keep doing to do the film criticisms. So MJans, I'm excited for that new course. Excellent. I'm glad to know that at least some people will be into it. I assume you're talking about the blender or the blend shapes. Sorry, shape keys is what they're called in Blender. Swords or medieval stuff. Okay, that's a cool suggestion as well. Excellent. Need to make note of that one. Okay, cool. So a couple more minutes left. Yeah, I'm kind of running out of steam today on this particular sculpture. I don't know. It didn't progress as fast as I wanted, but I think I'm hopeful about like the quality of wrinkles and how much more organic the forehead seems. I like the way the bridge of the nose is feeling. So yeah, I still have to address some things, but overall, I guess I'm going to count this as a fairly successful project. It's beyond throwing it in the dumpster and forgetting about it. So hopefully you'll see this printed. I'll post some images online, and that'll be the end of the Goblin project for now. So yeah, if you've got any last minute questions, please ask them. I'll be happy to answer. Oh, okay. MJans, you're excited for the course and also the new stream. Excellent. Really glad to hear that. Let me make sure that I'm not missing any questions. The chat has grown more and more active, and I love that. That is absolutely the point of us doing this. Where may you find the podcast? Absolutely. Let's go find it. VFX show podcast. It's by Mike Seymour, and he's like the one who's like the constant, the host, I guess. Wow. And then he's got guest people who come on, and they're just VFX people in the industry who've worked at ILM for years, and they go through VFX heavy movies and just talk about it. It's pretty good. I honestly haven't listened to it in recent months, but I was hooked on it for a long time. Just got distracted with other things, but it's a really, really good podcast. Really insightful. You get to glimpse into like the highest level of professional visual effects that's out there, and some interesting trivia about movies that you might not figure out otherwise. Cool. I appreciate the kind comments regarding the Goblin. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else? Prepping models for 3D printing live stream. That would be a good follow-up, honestly. That would be a good reason to, once I figure out what's going on with the ropes and how to make that watertight, and just generally prepping for 3D printing. We have a course about that. Let me see if I can find the link. Printing. Yeah, here it goes. We have a course from Jonathan Williamson about 3D printing on the Form 1. I'll post that link in the chat. So check that out, but I also might do another stream specifically for this Goblin, since I left some loose ends out there, like haven't figured out the ropes. Has there been a multi-res course yet? Yeah, I've used the multi-res course, or the multi-res sculpting feature on the realistic character course. I can post a link to that as well. But that shows the entire gamut of my sculpting workflow, creating a skin modifier base, dynamic topology sculpting on top of that, a animation-friendly retopology after that, and then ending with high-res detail sculpting, like really high-res detail sculpting with multi-res. And I will post that link as well. Sorry about this, the links not updating as URLs. I might have to ask Nick about fixing that. Awesome. Thank you for being here, and thanks for sticking through this Goblin sculpt. That was a lot of fun. I feel like we celebrated Halloween well, and this character was a great subject for that. So thank you, Tim, for the artwork. Again, thanks guys for being here. And I will see you next week for the the Blender film critique review stream. And have a great week. Hope you have a good rest of your Monday. And I told myself that I would be prepared to stop streaming before I said goodbye, so